Hi, I'm Amanda. Today we're going to talk about the Graduate Nurse Residency Program and the role it plays in continuing nursing education. A little fun fact, did you know that the average cost of nurse turnover is as much as $88,000 to $96,000 per nurse? The numbers are kind of staggering, but it just proves that the nurse residency program is an important part of the newly licensed nurses' transition from nursing student to nursing professional. Nurse residency programs have proven to be effective tools for increasing new graduate nurse retention in that first year of practice. So I think that's why they're important and that all healthcare organizations should offer one if they have the means and resources. This is a quote I'm including from the Institute of Medicine. It's from their report in 2010 that addresses the nursing shortage and gives some ideas for how the nursing profession can address those in the coming years. It says the nursing profession must adopt a framework of continuous lifelong learning that includes basic education, residency programs, and continuing competence. And I think we can all agree that there is an emphasis placed on continuing education in nursing as seen with CNEs and magnet conferences and even the push to have residency programs in the last couple of years. So I would say that we as a profession are addressing the issue. The top 6 concerns of newly licensed nurses include a lack of confidence in skill performance, relationships with peers and preceptors, struggles with dependence on others, frustrations with the work environment, organization and priority setting, and communication with physicians. And that comes from a study done by Casey Fink Krugman and Probst. I think we can all think back to our first year as newly licensed nurses and identify with one or more of those concerns. And the role of the nurse residency program is just to help that transition be a little bit more smooth. So who can benefit from the NRP, nurse residency program? That would be the newly licensed nurses. Anyone who's graduated from nursing school within the last 6 months is eligible to participate. Where would the NRP take place? Somewhere like a classroom or a simulation lab that has access to simulation dummies would be a great environment. Some things to anticipate that could be barriers or assets to the program. You would want to make sure to have support from your upper administration. Like I said, it's costly to have nurse turnover, but a program like this is also costly. To be accredited through the CCNE is upwards of $8,000. In addition to hiring costs with staffing and then resources and paying these nurses probably overtime in addition to working their FTEs. And then you'd also want to find passionate educators. I think we have learned from this class that you can't inspire other people to learn if you're not passionate about the subject and you're not a passionate educator yourself. It's hard to get people to buy in to something that you're not bought into as an educator. So some attributes of the student, and I apologize in advance for the way that my video down here overlays onto my slides, but I'll do my best to read what's behind there. So the students must have completed a nursing degree. They must have passed their boards and attain a job at their healthcare facility. Like I said, the goal is that the transition from nursing student to nursing professional would be smooth and that these newly licensed nurses would feel confident and supported in that transition. Some learning objectives. At the conclusion of the nurse residency program, the newly licensed nurse will report feelings of confidence and support on the Casey-Fink survey. So the Casey-Fink survey evaluates their confidence and comfort, skill performance, job satisfaction, etc., as well as leaves a place for open-ended comments from nurses to be evaluated. It's kind of their version of a study on the nurse residency program itself and gives them ideas for what to address throughout the program and kind of gauges the success of the program. So they take this survey 3 times. They take it at their initial hire mark, then they take it at 6 months and 12 months, and the goal is obviously that they would feel more supported and encouraged throughout the program. Our second objective, at the conclusion of the nurse residency program, the NLN will remain in his or her current role as a registered nurse and assume the role of a mentor for a new set of newly licensed nurses. So obviously we would want to see our nurse residents stay in their current role and not turn over. I think the average turnover is about 15% at the 1-year mark for newly licensed nurses. So we would love for them to stay in their role and then become a mentor to these new students, because truthfully they're the ones that have the most awareness about what it's like to be a new grad and can give the most support, as they were the ones that were there most recently in those shoes. And then this last objective would be that at the conclusion of the nurse residency program, the newly licensed nurse would complete and present an evidence-based project to their peers and superiors. So during my time in nurse residency program, we got to participate in an evidence-based project where we were given topic based on our unit demographic. So for my unit, we had surgical patients, and our problem to address was post-op pulmonary complications for patients who had undergone cardiothoracic surgery. It was really a neat project because we got to gather all the data ourselves, compile it into a comprehensive platform, and then present it to our peers and superiors on our 1-year mark of our hire date, which is really cool. A lot of people were there to support us, and some of the presentations that came up with really good nursing interventions were later incorporated into our facility's procedural manual. So we got to see real change come from these projects, and that's really cool. So I think constructivism is the theory that most closely aligns with the goals of the nurse residency program. Constructivist theory says that learners process new information through the lens of prior knowledge and experience. So these new nurses are bringing with them everything that they've learned in nursing school and the solid foundation that they've laid in nursing knowledge. But the nurse residency program gives them a safe space to refine that knowledge and to put it into practice. I think we can all agree that the nursing education in nursing school and the bedside nurse and their understanding of what nursing looks like is quite different, and the nurse residency program just helps bridge that gap. In constructivism, the educator acts as the facilitator. So in this case, the educator would create an environment for learning. They would pull in guest speakers from ancillary staff to parents to patients to hospital administration. They will coordinate simulation lab experiences. They would evaluate how the students, newly licensed nurses, are developing in their practice by way of journal entries and self-evaluation. And then the newly licensed nurse is ultimately responsible for developing their own knowledge. Hammond says that professional development relies on the nurse's reflection of their skills and opportunities for growth, and that just means that the more the nurse can introspectively reflect on their practice as they develop, the better that development occurs, or the more well-rounded they become as a nursing professional. Another theory that could play in would be humanism, which says that there's an internal motivation for students, and all students are pursuing their full potential, and that's where their motivation comes from. And I think that could play in here too, as nurses want to reach the self-actualization on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But I really do think that constructivism plays in a little bit more. So Kolb is a constructivism theorist, and his experiential learning theory is applicable to nurse residency. He has 4 stages: concrete experience, reflective observation of new experience, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. Kolb says that knowledge is created by transforming experience into existing cognitive frameworks, thus changing the way a person thinks or behaves. So in that concrete experience stage, a new experience or situation is encountered. In this case, the newly licensed nurse participates in a Code Blue simulation. The next step would be a reflective observation of that new experience, where the student can review and reflect on inconsistencies between their understanding and the experience. And so here we would see that the newly licensed nurses would reflect on the simulation and write about successes or opportunities for growth. This gives them the opportunity to explore within their own knowledge to see what expectations they may have had and how those realities played out. The abstract conceptualization phase is where that reflection in the prior step gives rise to a new idea or modifies existing abstract concept. So here, the newly licensed nurse participates in a debrief discussion, sharing their reflections. Here they can kind of explore and modify any expectations or preconceived notions that they may have had about what a Code Blue simulation would look like, and then move on from there to active experimentation, which would be where the learner applies these ideas to the world around them. And that encounter would be when the new nurse encounters a real Code Blue scenario in practice and can perform successfully. So in the experiential learning theory, the newly licensed nurse goes from maybe a prior expectation about how a situation would play out to being able to be refined in a safe environment, and then come out on the other end understanding in a new way and being able to be better for it in practice. I see this playing into my own personal philosophy because I think that the learner must be motivated to actually participate in the process of gaining knowledge, if knowledge is to be gained. I don't think, regardless of how effective the educator is, I don't think the educator can force knowledge onto someone. I think the learner always has to be in a place to be willing to receive that and participate and explore on their own if they want to gain knowledge. So I think that's what constructivism is. It's where the student comes in actively participating in their learning and exploring on their own, and they're intrinsically motivated, and the educator just really provides an environment where the learner can safely explore these new ideas and build on the building blocks of what they've come into the classroom with. So a plan for implementation of the residency programs, we would want to educate healthcare organizations on the impact of the nurse residency programs on retention and staffing expenses. As we talked about earlier, hospitals are kind of gaining in the understanding that NRPs do affect their retention in a positive way and decrease their expenses. While they may have to pay more upfront to get a program started, overall they're still, I think, saving money. We would have to anticipate acquiring funding for the program, whatever that may look like for the organization. We would need to hire program directors. Again, these need to be staff that are bought into the idea and passionate about new nurse education. We would need to create a program structure with dedicated staff. And I think the program structure can look a lot of different ways. So like we talked about earlier, that can look like kind of Q&A sessions with a panel of people involved in the healthcare organization, or it can look like a simulation lab where you're going over those scenarios specific to hospital policy. It can look like the evidence-based practice project where the students are kind of self-paced and self-motivated as they put together this project and come up with interventions that are appropriate. So it can kind of look like all of that. It's kind of up to the program directors at the hospital or healthcare organization. And then lastly, you would need to apply for accreditation through the CCNE. So the CCNE says that accreditation is an indication of CCNE confidence in the overall integrity of the program, the demonstrated success of the program in achieving program outcomes and engaging in continuous self-improvement, and the ability and wherewithal of the program to continue as an accredited program for the foreseeable future. So as we know, the accreditation is just the CCNE saying, yes, your program is effective, it's doing what you said it's going to do, and we support you. So we're going to look at the evidence that supports the importance of the NRP. Like we said earlier, that turnover cost is staggering when you think about a lot of times that's more than a nurse would make in a year. So to just put that amount of money into facilitating the growth of a singular person is crazy to think about. So these surveys are proven to be the gold standard for NRP evaluation. Nurses say that they are highly satisfied with the programs and that they are effective in achieving the outcomes that they pursue. So Nursing Solutions Incorporated shows us that nurses who complete 1 year of practice, the overall turnover has gone down from 15 to 7%, and nurses who complete 2 years of employment, their turnover has gone down from 12% to 11%, and that was back in 2012. So moving forward, we look at the strengths and the challenges of creating a program like this. The strengths would be improving retention rates and job satisfaction among nursing staff. I think when our nurses are more satisfied with their jobs, they're better at their jobs. Nurse residency programs also foster an atmosphere of trust and support within the nursing community, and I think within the hospital itself. I think with nurse residency programs, these nurses are more aware of their options in ancillary staff, whether that be with social work or nutrition or wound care or any of that. They get to know their peers and the people that they're going to work alongside with, and are, I think, more trusting that the organization that they work for is going to support them in their continued development. Another strength would be to improve patient care outcomes. Like I said, I think nurses are better at their jobs when they like their jobs. So a couple of challenges: you'd have to face outside factors affecting job satisfaction, which could then affect nurse turnover. You would also need to think about funding and then required progress and compliance reports to maintain accreditation, which are an ongoing process. So there would need to be a team in place that can create these reports and stay on top of the data there. And then some challenges and how we're going to anticipate those. We can survey nurses who choose to leave their position within the first year of practice to see what their motivation would be to finding new employment. We can seek out grants or sponsorships for nurse residency programs and help just educate hospital administration on the benefits of the program. I think once they know and can see some of that, they would be more in favor of supporting a program like this. And then we would want to continually evaluate the performance of the program and collect data for those CCNE reports. When reviewing our learning objectives, that first objective says that the NLN will report feelings of competence and support on their KC-FINC survey. So to measure that objective, we would just review those KC-FINC survey results at their start date, 6 months, and then 12 months. The second objective was the NLN will remain in his or her current role as registered nurse and assume the role of a mentor for the next set of newly licensed nurses. And we would measure that by facilitating mentorship programs and keeping record of where our nurses are employed and how they're involved with their mentorship program. And then our last objective was the NLN will complete an evidence-based project and present to their peers and superiors. And as the educators, we would evaluate those presentations and provide support and opportunity for working on those projects in nurse residency. So in closing, I found this quote that I really love. It says, "A team is not a group of people that work together. A team is a group of people that trust each other." And like I said, I think nurse residency programs foster an environment of trust and support where you know that the hospital wants you to continue your education and is encouraging that professional development, and that you are more aware of your ancillary staff and how they're supporting you in your practice and how you can utilize them to support your patients. And when we're working in healthcare, I think we need a really good, solid group of people and employers and coworkers that we trust. So thank you guys for watching my presentation. I look forward to viewing yours and learning from you guys as well. Here are my references. And let me know if you have any questions.